Good morning and afternoon. It's Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific. Welcome all to the Sharing Show. I'm Kane, and today I'm joined with David, better known as the Workday Sharing Guy, Keith, Logan, Teresa, and special guests.
Thank you, Kane. What's the most important thing about the Zoom chat?
Thanks, Logan. As always, when you're chatting and interacting with anybody on the show today, please make sure you select all panelists and attendees. So everybody gets to see what you're asking and everybody gets to see the answers as well. And real sort of sharing motion going on. So without further ado, I will pass this over to you guys and let's get this show started.
Thanks. So before you make your change to the default, those of you who are on the LinkedIn group, you know what you need to do with a special date in order to have priority for another special Apple Watch present. Put your date in the chat that was mentioned on the LinkedIn group. Looks like we have some good activity going on. And now, once you've put your date in, you can change it from the default to everyone. So make sure you click all panelists and attendees so that everyone can interact. Now what we're going to have you do is enter into the chat if you're live with Prism, looking into it, interested in data discovery and discovery board. So I want you to put Y if you're live on Prism. Yes, I'm live. I want you to put L if you're looking into Prism. I want you to put I if you're interested in discovery boards. And I want you to put N if you're not yet interested. And the next thing, this is a lot of practice for you in the chat. So the next thing I'm going to have you do is enter into the chat how many airings of the sharing show you've watched live and how many on YouTube. So for example, if you've watched 22 shows live and 11 shows on YouTube, then you would put 22/11. And now I'd like to introduce our co-host. We have Keith from Florida. Welcome, Keith.
Hey everybody, it's Keith from Florida again. For those of you that remember, a month ago, I was the co-host for the Workday Extend show. And if you didn't get a chance to watch that, we've recorded it. Love for you to go back and watch that. Super excited to talk about Prism today and the data discovery tools and some of the tools that are going to be available to everybody, not just Prism people later this year. So looking forward to talking about it today.
That's great. Welcome back, Keith. And so now we're going to have Prism and data discovery. On July 22nd, we're going to do comp. On August 5th, we're going to have calc field examples. And on the 19th, we have benefits. And you know what that means. September 2nd, you could be the co-host. So if you have ideas or you have themes you want to share, I want you to go on the sharingshow.com and you can let us know what you're interested in, what you'd like to see, what you'd like to share. You could be the next co-host.
What is next on the agenda?
Up next, we'd like to welcome Denise from Denmark with some performance management dashboards. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you. So I'm here today to show you 3 performance management dashboards that we have done. The first one is one called My Performance, which we created for employees to have easy access to everything related to their own performance. Then we created a manager's dashboard. This is called team performance, and this is everything related to performance for their direct reports and also for the full chain of employees below if they have that. The last one is for HR, and for them, they can prompt for which organization they would like to see the reports for. Finally, just to mention everything that I'm going to go through here, you can find the report definitions and actually also some calculated fields on that on community if you follow the link here. Also, the pictures you're going to see, just note that wherever you see that it says objectives, this is because we've relabeled it from goals. And wherever you see one-to-ones, we've relabeled from the check-ins. This is the first dashboard. This is the one for the employees. This is based on a Workday dashboard called Talent and Performance. We have used the tabbed approach. So this is the first tab of the dashboard. Here you can see the Workday Standard report. This is the one called Track My Objectives. That's the Workday Standard. And we've added a custom report for my review status for the past 3 reviews to show what who the review is waiting for, if it's the employee or the manager, and which step it is. On the right-hand side, you can see easy access to different reports and tasks. On the second tab, you see business goals. And in our organization, we have business goals only for the operating company level. And this is to give the individual employee easy access to the business goals that they can align their individual objectives to. Then on the third tab, you see the one-to-ones. This is what is called check-ins in Workday, unless you relabel it. Here they can see the notes from their previous check-ins, and they can also on the right-hand side click the link to edit and create one-to-ones. Then on the next tab, we have feedback. This is the standard one from Workday as well, so we're just using that to show, of course, the feedback received, and they can also request feedback. And then on the last slide, here we have the referrals and applications. This is also just Workday standard, but to give easy access to the employees because they don't always know how to find things. Then on the manager's dashboard, this is also a Workday standard dashboard that we've used and just added an additional tab to. This first tab, we've added a progress report as well to the managers where they can see for their full team. This first tab is just for direct reports for the managers to get an easy overview here. The second report here is my team objective status. This is just to give some details on all the objectives that all the employees in the team are working on. And the business goals report you see in the bottom right corner here is the same as you saw for the employees, now just for the managers to have easy access. The second tab is the one where the managers can see, if they are a manager's manager, they can see for the full organization below. So see how many in their organization have not yet completed their review, for example. And for the business goals, how many are aligning against these goals that they have set, to see if, for example, a business goal doesn't have any individual objectives aligned against it, then maybe that's a place where they need to look into. Then the third dashboard is the one for HR. Here we also have different tabs, and here, of course, HR will need to prompt for which manager's organization they would like to see the reports for. Again, the progress report, same as you saw before. Also the business goals on the next tab. Here again, they can also prompt for the organization and see how many individual objectives are aligned against each of the business goals. The next tab will show HR an overview of all the reports that are tagged with performance, just to give them an easy overview of the reports that are available to them. The links in the left-hand side are actionable, so they can just click straight into the report. They also get the description of each report, and they can also see who the report is shared with. Then on the next tab, we have, again, this is a different version of the report because this will show how many are actually using check-ins in the prompted organization. And same for the feedback tab, which will again also show how many are actually using this in the prompted organization. So for HR to get an idea about how the adoption is going for this, because for us, check-ins and feedback is new. And that was actually the last thing I wanted to show you. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I'll be around to answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. There was a question in the chat. It's like, how did you rename check-ins? Is that an easy one?
Yeah, you just use the custom labels in Workday. So yeah, that's easy. I can find the exact name for the task and just post it in chat for you.
Great. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you so much. What's next on the agenda?
Next, we are going to have our co-host come back, Keith from Florida.
Hey everybody, so we're going to talk about Prism, and this is just a sample of questions that people have asked, and we want to make sure we touch on. So what is Prism? What is Workday Prism and Prism Analytics, and how much does it cost? We'll talk about how do you get started and what are some common use cases. And we also always want to remind you to enter some ask in the chat box, and I, myself, or others will be able to respond to that. So look forward to hearing your questions. So what is Prism Analytics? This is a great slide, and I actually pulled it off the workday.com website. And you kind of work your way from left to right. And so you start with data. And that data is either it's coming from Workday, as that first box could be Workday, financial, HCM, or student data, and then there's operational data, and that's going to come from external systems and lots of scenarios that you've got. And then you get into the preparation stage, and this is where you're going to pull that data in, you're going to cleanse it, you're going to blend it potentially. You can apply additional or different security than what it may have had before, and then you're going to publish it. Once it's published, now that data source is available to you in the Workday tenant, and now you can use any of the standard reporting tools, whether it's a matrix or an advanced report or composite. You can also use it on worksheets, and you can use it in data discovery. and we'll talk a good bit more about data discovery. So what does it cost? Well, the Workday Prism Analytics, I'm not going to begin to guess what it's going to cost you. You have to talk to Workday about that, but that is a separate SKU that you have to buy. And to this point, data discovery was part of Prism, and you only got it with Prism. As of this fall, safe harbor, and this was announced at Rising last year, and Workday's been busy building this out over this past year. But this fall, everybody at some point will get access to data discovery. And the difference is that data discovery that is available to everybody will have access to core Workday data sources, but not Prism data. And if you're a Prism user, you'll get that as well. But that's going to be a huge value, and we'll give you some examples of that as we move forward. So how do you get started? If you go to Community, go to the main page, choose Cross Application, and then choose Prism Analytics, and there's a list of videos. There's all kinds of great resources that you can check out there to see use cases and instructions and all that if you're just researching it, or if you're looking, if you have it and want to get better at it, there's all kinds of great information there as well. So what's some use cases? So use cases, from an external standpoint, and how do you, leverage that? Here I'm specifically talking to kind of the data warehouse component of Prism as opposed to the dashboarding and that kind of stuff. And so you can bring in legacy position data, assignment data that was in a legacy system, and then you can combine that with Workday data that, of course, is growing as time goes on, and you may want to create a single view into that, and we'll show an example of that. Another example would be legacy finance data that you want to bring in and combine that with new finance data that you're generating as you're using Workday Finance. Another example is you may just be pulling data in from your CRM system, or maybe it's cases from ServiceNow and those type things, and you want to just show that data on a dashboard, even though it's not necessarily tied to any data in Workday. You can do that as well. So from a position and assignment standpoint, here's an example where we have a list of the assignments for a given person, and they can see all the assignments that they have, and we'll drill in here a little bit. And if you, I specifically want to call out the far right, in the sense that you see Workday showing up for the top two rows, which is data that is positions that person has been in that Workday has tracked, and then the rows below that were ones that we sucked in from the previous system and combined in a single view. Here's a finance version of this. In this case, we went live in 2018 with finance, and so the data from 2018, 19, and 20 is coming out of core Workday Finance, and the legacy data was loaded into Prism and then combined and then published out into a single data source that we could create matrix reports and all that off of that. So let's dive into this a little more. So a lot of times we talk about use cases, you see, nice pretty pictures, but what's behind the scenes? And so you've got the data prep side of this that I'm going to kind of open the black box and show some screenshots of some areas within the data prep side. And then you have the data discovery boards that is using either the data sources that you're doing in Prism, and in the future, the data sources that are core to Workday. So as if you wanted to, how do you get into Prism? You simply, you can do a worklet, but you can type in data catalog in the search bar. If you have security to do that, brings you to this screen, and it has a list of here's all your data sources. And so the first box is just the name of the data sources. And you see some acronyms there. Those are just naming conventions. We use BDS for base data set, which is a data set that either we brought in from a file or various other things. And the DDS is derived data set. That's where we're combining data sets. And then sometimes we'll use a PDS for a published data set. There's other ways you can see that, like in the other two columns here, but it's helpful sometimes when you're looking at a list to kind of have those naming conventions. And so what's the source type for these? You see some are coming from a Prism-enabled report that is drawn into Prism, and then this Prism data set, again, is where we're combining multiple data sets. And a file that you see there is where we're sucking in a CSV file, or from a SFTP site or a manual load, it'll show up as file. And then what's the status? You notice that there's a bunch of these that say not published and a few that say published. There are base data sets that may never be published because you have them only in there to combine with others, and then you usually only publish the kind of end product into the website, into Workday. So we drill, so if I would have clicked on one of those on the previous screen, it would bring me to this screen, and this is where I can view information about this data set. So the top box is kind of, again, what's the source type, when was it created, who created it, when was it last modified, in the lower box. There's two tabs there. There's the fields tab, which is just, here's all the different fields, and you can see there's a little graphic beside each of these that gives a clue that, oh, if it's an A, that this is a text field versus there's various other graphics for various other field types. You can see the publishing actions or activities, which is really important over time to say, did this get published yet? When was it last published? And there's a number of different views that you can look at the data here. So when you initially pull data into Workday, either from a report or from a file, Workday is going to automatically try to generate a schema for that data. And that speeds up the process, but Workday is trying to make an educated guess on what you want to use that a given field for. And so it's going to say, oh, this looks like a text field, this looks like an integer field, this looks like an instance field, etc. But it does give you the ability to change that before you do your publishing and that kind of stuff. So here's a list of kind of the standard ones: Boolean, integer, long, double, etc. You also have the ability, by default, it's going to come in and often have 6 decimal places if it's a number, and you can override that and make that 2. Again, these are just kind of the tools that you use to build your data sources. Here I'm showing a join, where in the box, the top part is kind of what, so I'm already in a data set. So now the question is, what data set am I joining to the one that I've already got? Then you see the match rows, and this is where you say, what's my primary key, so to speak, between these 2 different data sets? What am I tying on? And so here you can see we're tying on the position ID that is a field in each of those objects. We tie on that. You can actually create multiple ones. Then you choose, okay, primary pipeline. What rows am I including? Am I including only the rows in the primary pipeline with the additional data from the other object, or am I including ones that are in both objects? And so there's lots of different scenarios there. So now here's another example where you can come in here and you see import, then you see union, then you see manage fields. These are each of them is a stage, and each of them you have the little pencil there that you can go in and do additional configuration. And here we're looking at the data set that is the result of those different steps that we just looked at. And one of the things I wanted to call out is this particular one has 53 fields, but it also has 4 calculated fields. So in Prism, you can create new calculated fields, new columns, and there's a variety of things that you can use in those. But for those of you that are used to SQL, I wanted to show an example of a case statement. So this calculated field is actually a case statement, and you can put in really complicated case statements. You could also do math of this column times this column, or all the kind of things that you would typically do as you're creating a data source. And once you have a data source created, you have an option to go in and view the lineage. And that is, if I'm looking, in this case, we're looking at that PDS worker assignment history, which is the far right box. And the question is, how did we get to that box? And so this lineage shows all the files, all the data sources that went into that. And you see some of them are blue and some of them are yellow. The blue ones are just those standalone data sets. The yellow represents a combined data set. There's a join, there's those type activities, and then it rolls up. And so any of these, it's not a one, you're building this mapping, but each of these data sources, some of them, like a history thing, may never change because it's just history. Other things, you may be pulling in new data every day and then having it roll up. And at this point, there is a 24-hour, you can only do it once a day, but Workday is working on trying to get that down to multiple times a day, and that's on their roadmap for later this year, hopefully. So now we're going to kind of make a transition to the discovery board side of this, and Juliana, that's up next, is going to give you more examples. The one point that I want to make with this is that this data discovery board, I just created it, and it's about projects, and Again, Juliana is going to go into more details of the different things, but the significant thing is the data here is all about Workday projects. And in the past, I had to run the data through Prism to make this dashboard. In the past couple weeks, Juliana and I are with different companies, but we both had Workday data discovery turned on in our production tenant. So this is real for us. This isn't, only in preview or something, where we can actually pull data from core data objects. So these dashboards, in the past I could only do Prism, I now have access to the project data object, straight Workday project data object, and was able to create these reports without going through Prism, which is really hugely powerful. So next is Juliana, and so she's going to tell us more about creating data discovery boards. So
thanks, Keith. Hi guys. So we're going to start with what is Discovery Boards. Discovery Boards is a new ad hoc reporting tool, and it's going to allow you to do ad hoc analysis quickly and easily without having to create multiple permanent reports and dashboards. This feature is accessed through Drive, much like worksheets. And in the example that we've used here, we've used it to review the impact of events like hurricanes and COVID to evaluate our spending over time and the expenses related to these types of events. But you could use it to quickly evaluate metrics in areas ranging from employment diversity to payment processing times. Discovery Boards has a drag and drop user interface that I find more user-friendly than the standard report writing tool. However, you will still need some familiarity with report writing in order to select the proper data sources and fields. Just some basic vocab. A sheet is where you're going to add your graphics, and then each graphical representation on a discovery board is called a viz or a visualization. You can have multiple sheets on each discovery board and multiple vizzes on each sheet. To create a discovery board, you're going to access it through Drive. So you go to your menu, and then you're going to select Drive from the dropdown. That'll bring you to the Drive interface, and you'll click the plus sign, then Discovery Board. The Discovery Board interface will open, and you'll be presented with a list of available data sources. This list is searchable, and a description of each data source is available when you hover over it. Data sources span HCM, financial management, supply chain, and student applications. So once you've selected a data source, you'll be prompted to select your data source filter from the dropdown and complete standard prompts, which should feel pretty familiar. So that's when you get to the fun part, which is the Builder panel. So the Builder panel is where you'll configure your visualization. You'll start in the upper right corner and choose a chart type from the drop-down menu. And each time you make a change in the Builder panel, you'll automatically be able to see the change reflected in the graphic you're creating. Next, you'll choose your fields from the field list on the left and drag and drop them into the axis on the right. You can play with which field goes where and see the impact in real time. You then have options to format your access, sorting them, limiting your access groupings to quickly identify your top 10 or maybe bottom 5 performers. You can also customize the access labels and more. If you're creating a chart, you'll then choose your chart type. Again, you can switch between them to see which chart best represents your data. Last is the filter panel. So after you've chosen your fields, you can filter the data included in your graphics at the individual viz level or at the sheet level. Once you've created your first viz or sheet, you can then easily copy it and swap out fields for new opportunities for analysis. You can also see here that each viz can be exported as an image file or an Excel report. So for example, to make this new sheet, I just had to copy the original sheet and then add one filter for the OV business unit. And now I can see how this event impacted a specific business unit without having to reconfigure every viz. Additionally, the size and location of each viz is up to you. To move a viz, you just drag and drop it to a new place on the sheet, and to resize, again, you just drag it to the size that you want. It's much more user-friendly than the dashboards where they just give you an option of size 1 or size 2. You really get to choose where you want everything and the size that you want. So to recap, Discovery Boards provides an easy-to-use interface which allows for quick ad hoc analysis. From an end user perspective, it's similar to dashboards, but more dynamic and user-friendly to configure on the report writer side. And it allows you to play with data to uncover trends.
Thank you so much. So what's next on the agenda?
That was great information, Juliana. Thank you. Up next, we're going to have David, and he's going to share some more information about our Apple Watches.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's David, the sharing guy. And this is a picture of Marilyn, whose birthday it was when she won her first Apple Watch. Turns out she won a second one with a Kahoot win on a somewhat recent show. So she's giving away one of the two that she won. Those who saw that at the beginning of this show, if you're on the LinkedIn group, you get kind of a heads up right before the show. So right here from thesharingshow.com, you could go and you would see where to join the LinkedIn group there. And so on that page, you would get access to the LinkedIn group, and that would help you like with clues as to what we're doing when Workday hits 200, which, by the way, might happen today. It's very close. The last time that we hit, though, was Marilyn's birthday. It was only on that day, and it was during the show that it happened. So that might happen again in the next few minutes, but that's when it happened last, live during the show. Marilyn posted on Community. There's a calendar there of people's birthdays. Now we will also have a calendar of people's hire dates. To zoom in a little bit here, she also was helped by some four-legged friends. She was fostering a couple of puppies. This is important for me to add just because Dave Duffield has, as co-founder of Workday, has this as part of his history of helping fostering and adopting animals. So that was part of Marilyn's presentation and share in the last show. I've added onto her community post what would happen if we cross over 200. 200 and a penny is what's required. If we get there and it's not somebody's birthday today, we'll go half birthday, we'll go 1/3 birthday, we'll go quarter birthday. We will actually use a calc field to go minus 200 days or plus 200 days. All that's on Community.
Great. What's next on the agenda?
Up next, we have Chris from California. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm from a large technology company, so if you see here, we have this really large landscape of other systems in our ecosystem, and we've really taken Prism to use it as the data hub to inherit a lot of the security that we have in our Workday solution, and we also connect it with discovery boards for self-service. Now, if we move on to the next slide, what we can show you here is we have a lot of use cases crossing over people and purpose. And then the next slide will show you we also have a lot of use cases that are live for IT and finance as well, and for services. Since we're a large technology firm, we have to consider our services arm as well. And then in the future, we're working on just continuing to ramp out more and more use cases. And we really, we see some of these take up to 2 weeks, and then some of them obviously can take anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12. And so I'm just going to dive into a few of them here really, really quickly, given the time. First one is that, as Keith had mentioned, you can use history. And so we use our Morgan Stanley history to really give our people leaders visibility into their overall historical compensation data, including stock, since we compensate our employees with a lot of stock. So we're taking in that Morgan Stanley historical information, putting it in one place on a composite report. Then we also look to the future with that information so that people can see their total rewards. So they're able to see how much am I actually being paid when it comes to my overall stock and my future stock vesting dates. Now, if we move to the next slide, this one's going to be a bunch of slides just to show you we're taking in our best workplace surveys, which are external to Workday. So any of our external survey detail, we're tying that to the worker profile. We're serving that up to executives, directors, and above, and our HR business partners so that they can see these scorecards right here to see not only the health of the organization from acquisition, but then if you keep going, we're showing you more charts, more details behind all of it from a sentiment perspective as well. So you can see the health of your acquisition, your pipeline of your employees, all the way through their entire employee life cycle and understanding their sentiment too. So these next few are just additional details for that use case. And see, these are just the different ways you're able to slice and dice that information, blend it together and serve it up to a dashboard. And so then this next slide here, this is when we're starting to add in ServiceNow information into Workday. And so then you could get insight into your inventory levels. So I know that that moves more into the procurement and the finance side, but we also are using this to forecast for our new hires or any type of laptop refreshing. So you could think of just the possibilities in terms of taking case management or ServiceNow tickets, any procurement information to make sure that you're really forecasting out the cost of your workforce and your employees and servicing them and procuring any of the business goods and assets they need. Now, if we move to the last one, this one's extremely powerful for us as well. Like I said, we're a large technology firm, and so we have to really support our services org as well. And so we give our services team insight into their current team capacity, including the actuals, the forecasts, the future projects in the closing sales cycles, right? So all their opportunities down to that opportunity level. And we're taking all that information in from Salesforce. We have a lot of use cases taking in Salesforce detail and providing that to our practice leads so they get a really good understanding of what their capacity looks like and is going to look like in the future. So this helps us really see what their burn rate's looking like. And
Chris,
that is everything for me.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. You went through pretty quickly. Just to give us an idea, I'm just going to go back through that one, and then we have several different visuals. Give us an idea. This took you like just a few hours, or did it take you a couple days to develop all this?
Oh, this one here, this workplace survey, can take, we're continuing to add on to it, right? So this one can take a few months. So this is something that takes time for sure. When you start looking at things like just the logistics dashboards, they can take a few weeks. So it really depends upon how clean your data is, how you have access to that data. And that's the main thing really. And then Prism, like I said, the use cases can take a couple weeks, but they could also take a few months, depending upon the data.
Yep. Okay. All right. So thank you, Chris. Lots of great examples there. A lot of people at the beginning said they're new to Prism. So it's great to see, over 40 different Prism examples. Thank you again, Chris.
Yeah, no, of course. Thanks so much.
Well, now we would like to thank our co-sponsors. So first we have David, the sharing guy. David wants you to know that he now has a web page. So if you go out to davidthesharingguy.com, you can find several fun pictures and stories tied to Workday events and fun that we've had. And you can also get a lot of information about calculated fields workshops. And also, if you haven't seen it yet on Community, David has posted some initial information about the pre-Rising 2020 Share-a-thon. So those that want to share and join the sharing team to help out with this event, please reach out to David at davidthesharingguy.com.
We would also like to thank Dovetail. Kane has been a marvelous sponsor and co-host the whole way. Dovetail provides HR service delivery software that reduces the number of questions into HR by over 50%. Dovetail also provides emergency response management software that provides HR with tools to manage all coronavirus-related questions from employees, along with symptom checking and contact tracing. Dovetail is also tracking COVID-19 case volumes from HR teams globally. So to learn more, go to dovetailsoftware.com. Thank you, Dovetail.
Okay, I'm just going to show once again the shareandshow.com. If you go to the content under themes, you'll see the upcoming shows. Thank you everybody for this show. The next show will be on comp. After that, calc field examples, and we're into August, and we'll do benefits just in time for open enrollment. Again, the link to join the LinkedIn group, watch previous episodes, you could click here and you will see all the previous episodes. And Kane, that brings me to you to wrap us up.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Keith, Logan, Teresa, and special thank you to our guests for speaking on the show today. As always, as David mentions, we publish these recordings on our YouTube channel. You will find them on the Sharing Show website, and also you can hop over to YouTube, click subscribe and like, and you will get notified when we post this one up. All that's left to say is everybody have a great workday.